At some point early on in my process with PC Linux OS, I like to pay some attention to the organization of my desktop. So let's take a minute and just explain some of the big items here you're going to see. It's actually fairly similar to a Microsoft Windows environment. This main big area is exactly the same, analogous to the desktop window of a Windows machine. And these icons are descriptively named and generally do the obvious things, pretty much the way you'd expect under Windows. Left-clicking on them will activate them. For example, if I left-click on this one, just one click, it opens my home folder where I can see the files I've created, and I can scroll around on them using drag, toolbar items, pretty much the way they would under Windows. Notice I said single click. Linux is very configurable. You can configure it so that a single click will open these windows, or you can configure it so that a double click will open these windows. And different Linux distributions default to different ways. You just kind of have to get accustomed to it and then learn how to configure it, which we'll talk about later. But in general, your desktop will look and feel a lot like Windows. And if you're flexible and open to new concepts, like any reasonable, rational person would be, you'll be able to figure this out in just a few minutes. At the bottom, there are these icons down here. This area is called the kicker panel, or just the panel in Windows parlance, and it has icons that represent stuff. If you hover over one of those icons, you get some additional information, like hovering over this one says, configure your computer, or hovering over this one, the Synaptic Package Manager. In general, hovering over an icon will give you information like that in a way that's similar. It will help you figure out how this relates to your Windows experience. This lower left-hand button, the PC button, is similar to the Start button in Windows, and hovering over it, it says Application Launcher Menu. Left-clicking on it brings up a menu of applications pretty well organized by type, or recently used applications, or commonly used actions. Also down here we've got icons representing the devices on your network. Here's one representing the speaker. My volume is set to 100%. If I left click on that, it'll bring up the master volume control or the mixer. With a single click there, I can configure either my wireless audio or my main audio. This computer happens to have two different audio cards in it, so I can hop back and forth and adjust the volumes on each of them independently. It's very similar to Microsoft Windows mixer, although I find it a little more powerful, a little more flexible. Similarly, here there's an icon representing the USB activity. The most recent device is our 15.3 gigabyte external hard disk drive that's plugged in there, our last one detected. Here's also a status of our network. It tells me that I'm connected and gives the details about how. Other information here. Notifications and jobs. No jobs or notifications are active. We haven't done very much with this thing yet. So there's a general overview of how to deal with the desktop under Linux. This happens to be a KDE style desktop, and there are other styles. This can look dramatically different, but this is the default for the usual and customary and most common version of PC Linux OS.